I'm live. I'm live. Are you live? Is anybody here? Hello, I'm here. Hello. There's three people here. And hey, Jeff. Now, first things first, is my microphone working right? I sure hope so. I bought a whole new audio system. Should be working. Good. All right. Okay, well, I'm going to start at the beginning, and it relates directly to what you wrote to me about this week. So I'm going to start with this question. Of all the chilling things, despicable things that you've heard Trump say, yeah, mood lighting. I've always got the, let's see, I got to get this. You got to have the right production value, so else no one's going to believe a word I say. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, so of all the chilling things Trump has ever said, so I've got my answer to this question, but I want you to think about it too. What is the most chilling? To me, it was 4 syllables. He said it during the Hillary Clinton debate, I think the first one. It's not the most despicable or the most stirring or outrageous to me. He said, that makes me smart. Those were the most chilling words he said. I mean, the guy says a lot of chilling things, but that one actually gives me the MO that I find so chilling. Hello, good to have you here. So, good afternoon. So you say it's 11 o'clock here in California. We've had a heat wave and we're coming out of it. Just had a dog walk with Terry. Terry, who's leaving in less than a week, so I will be, I'll be seeing him less. Anyway, that makes me smart. From my perspective, Trump ran on nothing but pretending he's always right, righteous, mighty. That all the movement actually comes down to is a confidence addiction. It's very much like heroin, and I'm saying all of this to bring us to a framing that I think will be related to what Jeff is talking about, what Jeff wrote to me about this week. So we're now dealing with addicts. So the connection between heroin being called heroin because it makes every user feel like a hero, and that you get detached from reality from it. And the same could be said about alcohol in its own way. I have been to Ludlow Fair and carried halfway home or near pints and quarts of Ludlow beer. Then the world seemed none so bad, and I myself a sterling lad, and down in lovely muck I lay, happy till I woke again. Then the sun rose in the sky. Hey ho, the tale was all a lie. The world, it was the old world, yet I was I. My things were wet. So there's something about I myself a sterling lad. Here's a guy talking about drinking alcohol. So I think that Trumpism is this kind of addiction, and this is why this today is called culture wars are actually confidence wars, and that's what I want to talk about. How do you fight a confidence war with people who are totally addicted to unlimited confidence because they can make up a rationalization for anything? They can do that. That's what we see the Trumpists do. And MAGA is currently a little larger than it was in 2024. And a recent poll shows that they are 100% in support. They have a 100% favorability rating for Donald Trump. So we're talking about people that they could say, they could give me all sorts of reasons, what I'd consider rationalizations or moralizations. But I see a movement that is basically figured out a way that they can say, well, that makes me smart. So I'm trying to set up a situation for you. Okay, you got these guys who are addicted to confidence, unlimited confidence, and it would be sadomasochistic. That is, any threat to them would be they would attack it, because there are 2 ways to gain confidence. One is to lift yourself up, and the other is to put down others. Since confidence is, you could say, like self-love, it's relative, something like that. So, what are you going to do in such a situation? Well, there are the attempts to support them or lovingly reach out to them, and there is benefit to that. But I don't know. But I want to pose a additional challenging question, which is, okay, I feel a need to shake their confidence, and they are going to resist that with all their might. Now, why are they gonna resist it? Well, confidence for them is a competitive value, and so you can't have if they will take it, whether you mean it or not, they will take it as you stealing their confidence. So they've got their confidence and it's very high. They are sure that they are right because everything they ever say or Trump says or anybody in the movement says makes them feel smart, right, righteous, and mighty. So if you come along and threaten them, they will treat it as you trying to steal their confidence. Zero-sum game. You're going to take their confidence and you're going to use it for yourself. And on top of that, you got another challenge here, which is that you're at your shakiest when you're confronting a Trumpist. It's not our easiest place to be. So in fact, there will be a part of us that easily looks like we're trying to steal their confidence. And I hear it in all of the comments I get on my videos from those of us in the resistance. We are savaging them verbally, but not face to face. A few people talk like they do, and I talk like I do, but I don't that much. But notice that you'll have a little bit of performance anxiety or stage fright when you go into this. They are, whether they mean it or not, they're going to say, you're just trying to steal my confidence. You have Trump derangement syndrome. You're just trying to steal my confidence. So that's the bind I see us in. And what I'm trying to do is actually shake but not steal their confidence. And if I can, offer them a better route to confidence, a place that they could get where they may not have as much confidence that they've got as confidence addicts in this excuse-making thing, but there's got to be some dignity for them out the other end, or else there's no soft landing and they won't jump. Yeah, Jeff, you're right. And yet the question, so what was the difference between true and false? Because any of us can objectively, any one of us can feign objectivity that we know true confidence from false confidence. Here's how I would frame that up. True confidence is earned through competence. If you're good at something, then you earn some confidence. And it's gotten harder for people to feel like they're good at something because the world has gotten more difficult. And that's why there would be this temptation to join a movement that gives what you describe as false confidence, but what I'm saying is unearned confidence, unqualified in both senses. That is, you didn't qualify for your confidence. That is, you didn't do the work to get good at something. You're just suddenly an instant expert on everything. But also, it's unqualified in that other sense, meaning that it's unlimited. So would you trade, if you were addicted to heroin, would you trade it for the happiness and virtue that comes from true confidence? Suppose that you're someone who got into the Trump movement because you were disgruntled, you were Joe the plumber, and you were frustrated and angry and increasingly resentful, and then you got into this free, false confidence. And then someone comes along and says, you should try real confidence from something you do. Well, I think that'd be a nice way to shake them, but I'm not sure how much of a temptation that would be. One of the things they say about heroin, I think, is even truer of Trump-style herobotic heroin, which is there's no high like it. One former heroin addict said, this is the problem. Once you've had the ecstasy of heroin, nothing else comes close. You really have to settle for less. So I'm raising these as interesting challenges, but here's one other piece of it for me, that if I offer them the confidence I've got, so imagine this, I got a little stage fright, performance anxiety, because I'm about to encounter a Trump supporter. And I want to shake their confidence, but I also want to give them a better alternative. And since I'm not feeling that confident in the moment, what I'm going to go to? I'm going to go to my sources of confidence and offer them. I'm going to try to sell them on my confidence. Not a good move. It won't work. My confidence, let's say I was a liberal who believed in all the memes I've read over my life about love and kindness and fairness and justice and inclusivity and tolerance and all of that. I think that stuff's great, but I don't think it sells well to people who have already gotten their confidence by laughing at it. So they'll just call us woke. I don't think they're right, Um, but I have to pay attention. The customer is not always right, but if you want to make progress with the customer, you're going to have to basically treat them as if they are. You're going to at least need to know what they want. Now, I don't have a solution to this. I came up with this framing just a couple of minutes ago. So let me just summarize the framing. They're addicted to confidence. They're having a confidence high. It comes from having put us down. That's part of how they got their confidence. And it comes from them being able to rationalize or justify anything, including deflecting anything we say. Meantime, we come to them with some stage fright performance anxiety because it's not our natural situation to be confrontational with them. And they're going to whether we mean to or not, they're going to think that we're in there to steal their confidence. And we are to some extent. That is, part of us would really like to win the debate once and for all and walk away triumphant on behalf of our values. So, and our values are kind of the problem because you're not going to be able to sell them on moving towards your values if your values are just the same old liberal stuff. So, so there is, okay, so yeah, I'm laying that out as something to meditate on, and I think it was partly inspired by reading an exchange that Jeff had gone through, and we'll be talking about that sometime soon as well. I mean, in a conversation face to face, we can have that conversation where you get to talk as well. But in the meantime, another thing that's been on my mind these days, and this is more on the side of the shaking them, is Mako. So Trump always chickens out is dangerous because in a way it challenges him to double down, which he's inclined to do anyway. And there's kind of an advantage to that, but also he can double down all sorts of slippery ways. So I don't think, so he could do it dangerously as he is in Iran, but he can also double down on, no, that makes me right. And I think I mentioned this to you before. Sacha Baron Cohen, when he's playing a character and someone begins to doubt him, he doubles down on the character. If someone begins to think, wait, he's playing a role, he doubles down on it. Trump does the same thing. What are you doing for good or bad? That's a separate question. The move is really interesting, though. So Trump doubles down. I'm very grateful that he does it. But what I mean by MAGA always chickens out, I made an AI video of a guy wearing an ultra MAGA shirt that expresses this. That's really a useful way to shake them. They chicken out. They wanted the release of the Epstein files. They wanted America first. But as soon as Trump changed his mind, they chickened out on their stances. And not only that, the biggest chickening out that they're doing is that they cannot admit that they were ever wrong. They can't admit they are showing real steadfast dedication wimpiness to Trump being always right. Makes them smart, makes them feel smart. So those are just some thoughts from this morning. I'm paying some attention to this Mako thing. It's not a great word, but it builds off of something, and I think it's more the point. Because I don't think we have any influence on Trump at this point. The best I can hope for is that we'll have some influence on elections, and for that we need to have these one-on-one conversations. And again, I want to come back to this for a second. Why do I think that makes me smart is the most bone-chilling thing Trump has ever said? It's because it's his overall MO. And I don't want to get distracted by this or that outrageous thing he says. His overall MO and the overall MO I see in all the Trump supporters, and I find more and more evidence for this, though I have to say something about finding more and more evidence for what one believes. I think that's his MO is I can now make up an excuse. It's basically pathological excuse making, rationalizing, moralizing. It's a thing that humans can do. It's a thing that humans would do under stress. And I think that's what's going on. All right. So that was all a mouthy sermon at the beginning, just because it's a Sherman sermon. But in the meantime, anybody, once again, we're playing with your ideas primarily here. That's my goal. And I would welcome any ideas you might want to play with here. I've got more we can always talk about. I've always got something else I can talk about, but let's start with anything you've got. If anybody's got anything they'd like to talk about. Yeah. All right. In the meantime, while you're thinking about that, or if you're whether you come up with something or not, somebody else jump in. I have run out for the moment. There we go. It's all right. I can always jump in if I have to, and I can. I just want to make sure that this feeds whatever interests you have. I've been making a lot of videos lately in the uh, how to roll trolls and stump uh, Trumpist spirit. Um, I've also stopped scripting as much, which means that I'm actually putting out a longer video every day, and there seems to be some interest and audience for that, which is nice. Um, let's see, and a lot of people have been asking to join the group, so there's all of that. I'm just trying to think about. Oh, I put out one yesterday um, about hypocrisy, and I think this relates to what we're talking about. So, uh, if if I have stage fright, performance anxiety about confronting a Trumpist, what I'm going to try to do is I am going to try to use those loaded, load-bearing, loosely defined last words in my defense, which means you're a hypocrite, which means I'm not. So I did a whole video yesterday about a question that's been on my mind for years, which is if we all engage in hypocrisy, what distinguishes a hypocrite? Same with lying. We all engage in some lying. And so the question is, what distinguishes a liar? I don't have a solid answer to it, but I think it's a good question um, because hypocrisy is just fascinating this way. And I mean, this relates to all my interest in meta or up leveling and whatever you want to call it. Um, the ways you can look at things from one level up to another one, all that. So um, so the exempt by contempt move that has been on my mind for so long, which is since I see hypocrisy in you and I disdain it, that proves I'm not a hypocrite. That's actually meta hypocrisy. So other people are hypocrites, but not me. And you can do that out level after level after level. So as I say in that video, for example, I'm pointing out in this video, I'm describing how really when you think about what humans are and what we know about children, this idea that we are consistent, coherent, not double dealing is kind of ridiculous. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. When you look at kids, it's not like they evaluate all of their impulses for consistency and only act on those impulses that are consistent with their other standards. You look at any human being, and we are not only like all other organisms in that we are self regenerative and therefore our own survival is a priority, but we can rationalize our self-dealing till the cows come home, one level after another. So if that's the case, we all engage in some hypocrisy. Then what do we do about that? Well, the standard move we make about it is we say, well, since hypocrisy is bad and integrity is good, try to have integrity and don't have hypocrisy. It's kind of a fake it till you make it move, and everybody should have integrity and to be polite to other people, assume that they have integrity, that they're not hypocrites, because that would be a really dangerous thing to accuse someone of. Accusing someone of being a hypocrite is those are fighting words, and then you're into a competition where they could attack you right back. Um, so that's the fake it till you make it move, where you treat hypocrisy like a rare pathology of deficient souls. And I'm arguing in that video it's not working very well. You know, it's in the same fake it till you make it uh, school as crime never pays. It's like saying hypocrisy never pays, which is just fucking absurd. I mean, hypocrisy, if you can get away with it, is just great. I mean, think about it. It's self-dealing, right? If you can get away with hypocrisy, so to say it never pays is, you could say, it could work, but it doesn't seem likely to, because everybody wants to claim that they have integrity and they deny that they are hypocrites, and therefore they're not managing it. You cannot manage an addiction that you don't acknowledge you have. So let me say, as a member of Hypocrites Anonymous, um, I engage in hypocrisy. If I can figure out a way to get away with cutting a corner in my dealings with someone, if they won't notice, I certainly will be tempted. and I'll probably engage in it if I can get away with it and it doesn't have any long-term consequences to my trust or something like that. And I probably won't notice that I'm doing it. This stuff that's going on. It's such a, okay, the power to two people engaging in conversation you're proposing. Yes, now, I was talking about, so I had shifted topics, though there is a relationship. But so I would want to hear, Rob, what you mean by, so are you talking about the conversation I'm proposing between me with my stage fright performance anxiety talking to a Trumpist, or are you talking about two people who are suspicious of each other's hypocrisy? Um, so, and yes, it does depend on the power dynamic. Meaning, for example, you're really in trouble, the hypocrite one. Okay, so imagine the power dynamic. Let me just play with that for a second. So imagine you got a power dynamic where you're talking to your boss, and you've long suspected that your boss is engaged in double dealing, and that puts you at a disadvantage. Yeah, so you wouldn't want to accuse them of being a hypocrite because you could lose your job and the food on your table and all of that. So, and they can call, since they have the power, they can call you a hypocrite. So, for example, the Trumpists, back to that conversation, are always calling us hypocrites. And they're also doing it in a way exactly in line with this idea that I'm just proposing. It comes out of, you hear it in the church, you hear it in all sorts of social norms. So try this out. I'm a Trumpist, and I'm talking to you, and I say, I've got integrity. I'm MAGA all the way. I am completely consistent in everything I say. I am not a hypocrite. I have integrity. I have critical thinking. Uh, um, I hereby grant myself that source of authority. And I'm now saying that you are a hypocrite because I am good at diagnosing it. You need to get more self-aware. And the fact that I'm telling you that proves that actually I don't need to get more self-aware. I am the authority on it. So yeah, the power dynamics are huge, and you will often be in this situation where are you are tempted to defend yourself. And I am suggesting, this is where this was going, is a different approach. And I don't think it's easy to adopt this different approach, but I think it is probably to have the confidence to go in there and shake their confidence without it looking like you're trying to steal it. If someone said to me, you're a hypocrite, like someone accused me, and someone did actually over dinner last night. That was a fascinating conversation with an Ayn Rand fan, who I find incredibly difficult company, but so do others, and that's why I sat next to her, because I was doing a favor to some other people who didn't want to deal. But anyway, if I'm accused of it, I don't defend. I have practiced enough to recognize, well, yes, I engage in hypocrisy. And the question isn't whether we do, because you do and I do and everybody cuts corners. I might ask, what is hypocrisy? What does hypocrisy mean to you? It's a complicated word. You know, I could say double dealing or self-dealing or any of that sort of stuff. But I still have to get down to what is the what distinguishes a hypocrite, because we're loose about this. They say, you did something, you lied to me, that means you're a liar. Or you did something hypocritical, that means you're a hypocrite. We round that way, and we do it as part of the weaponizing of these loaded words. One thing I got this week that I just loved, remember I said about those loaded words like hypocrisy, I want to be a hypocrite. There are times when I want to be a hypocrite. I just want to point it in the right direction. Be careful where you point that thing. And this person says, yeah, be careful where you point it. That thing's loaded. Do you see how that works? I love that. That was just how I missed that double entendre. I don't know. But anyway, I like it very much, and I'm going to be using it from now on. So, yes, careful where you point those loaded words. They're loaded, right? But I also have to, so if it's not going to become an infallibility death match, a fight to the death over who gets the confidence in a zero-sum game, either you're confident or I'm confident, and if I challenge your confidence, I'm ripping off your confidence. I want your confidence. I'm parasitic on your confidence. If I want to avoid that, I have to have already come to terms. I have to have pre-grieved the fact that I engage in lying and hypocrisy and all of that. I have to move away from the purist fake it till you make it stance, and I have to move into the face it till you make it stance, which is, I think, where I have to be. If I want to manage my capacity for hypocrisy, then I actually have to admit that I have one. Or, the same as you can't get a heroin addict to manage their addiction if they don't admit they have one. That's that same theme. I just keep on coming back to it. And how that work has to begin with me, in part because if I do that, if I can pre-grieve the fact that I have in me all of those features of human nature, then I have a way to neutralize their attacks before they shake my confidence, to not grab at the confidence that would make them feel like I'm stealing it. And I'm being more realistic, and I'm raising the question, okay, where should we be hypocritical and where shouldn't we be hypocritical? The alternative is to say, and I do this plenty, but I don't think it's necessarily the most effective thing. It's just, a guy will accuse me. Yesterday, a guy was accusing me of being hateful. This was a Trump supporter. And I said, no, you're totally right. I ought to take a page. I ought to learn a lesson from the MAGA people because you guys are nothing but love. That kind of move is one I do. But that's even that's got that competitive thing where, no, you do it. No, you do it. I know you are, but what am I? I know you are, but what am I? So I'm looking for an alternative to that. And, so if someone accuses me of being a name caller, which I get from those guys as well, I said, yeah, of course I name call. I'm not trying to name call or not name call. I'm trying to name call right. And you just called me a name caller. Tell me what you think is the right place to name call, right? What's the wrong place to name call? This begins to expose their hypocrisy because they say, well, name calling is okay. They'll deny that they're name calling. Once again, that makes me smart. They'll just rationalize everything. But the real question is, where do you apply this stuff? It's not a question of whether you engage in lying or hypocrisy. It's a question of where. So once again, the closest I've got to an answer to this question, what distinguishes a hypocrite since everybody engages in hypocrisy, would be the return to the original quotation, which is power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So tends to get left out. And I think it's crucial. Power corrupts. No, power doesn't always corrupt. It tends to. And the same would be true for any power move. So, for example, hypocrisy is a power move. It's a way that I can externalize negative internalities. If I don't like something, I can offload it on someone else. I can project. I can say they do it, I don't. That's hypocritical, okay? So, yeah, it tends to corrupt, but I can think of situations in which being a hypocrite is the right move. And the problem is the absolutism. And think about what absolute means. Again, this is me repeating some of the same stuff. By now, some of you have hung out in my universe long enough to realize that it curves back in. Yeah, I am regenerating from this stuff. Let's see. I'm going to read these comments first before I go into. Let me just go to this one thing, and then I want to read the comments and respond. Absolute originally meant dissolved away from. And so absolution is dissolved away from your sins. You're free from consequences for your bad actions. Absolution. And absoluteness would mean that you are dissolved away from any influences. It's I think back to absolute zero, which we cannot reach. Absolute zero would be the temperature at which Brownian motion stops and everything falls to the ground. We can't reach it. Why? Because we cannot reach perfect insulation. Absolute zero would be so insulated, and that means that it would have no contact with its outside environment. So what we're talking about is fake absolution and fake absoluteness that is possible for us humans because we can rationalize anything. Okay, so here we go. So let's see what we got here. Online speech is free from physical retaliation normally. how do we use that as an advantage? Good. Or perhaps we're self-owning, poking fun at ourselves to disarm them. Great question. And yeah, one thing we can do with it is take space. Last night, it was 9 of us at a table, and I had chosen to sit next to this person who I find difficult company for me, and the feeling's mutual. And at one point in the conversation, she is hyper animated and said, "You're a really dramatic person." And this is in the middle of a lecture on how I should be more like, she's basically decided to become my personal coach. You know what you should do? This is the problem with you and all this sort of stuff. And she's really on a roll. And so what I do is something I learned in the very first meeting of the psychoproctology group from a hypnotherapist who hasn't been back to the meeting recently, in recent years, but she was a hypnotherapist out of Oklahoma who said, whenever the tensions mount, get up and go to the bathroom. And that's what I did. So I got up at the table. There's 9 people sitting there, and I melodramatically played out a frenetic, "You're a really dramatic person," and then I walked off to the bathroom. I was told that she looked consternated afterwards. I think that's what I was after. But space taking is really good, and you get to do that online. So anytime you feel an urgency, and I still feel this urgency sometimes, you gotta find your ground again. Remember, you will go into these interactions with some performance anxiety and stage fright. It's so different from the kind of interactions we like. You're going to get confrontation with a bullshit artist. If you're talking to a Trumpist, they're just going to do the same old stuff, and you're going to lose. It's like, yes, you are going into fight with the pig. You'll just get dirty, and the pig will like it. And yet I'm still saying sometimes you got to do it. And then the question is, okay, so how you're doing? This is Rob's question here. Great question. I wanted to say, I thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you. On psychology, thank you. Nice to hear. Glad to have you here. Yes, and this goes on and on. And actually, I want to get to one more idea this week that's really interesting to me: metaphobia and metaphilia. For whatever reason, I think I can explain it. It's not about my virtue. Why I love meta so much. Why I love the rung running up and down the ladder and looking at the slippery moves we do when we are metaphobic. So I just got to capture this for a minute and then come back to Rob's point. Metaphobia works 2 ways. It's fear of fear. So metacognition would be thinking about thinking, and metaphobia would be fear of fear. But it's also fear of going meta. And going meta isn't always an up-leveling. Going meta recognizes that there are different levels. It's what I call being multi-level headed. So as someone who, for whatever reason, really likes it, I might just find it deliciously complicated and stressful, but complicated, is I love that rung. It's just, and I think part of it probably is that I get power from it. So maybe this does relate to Rob's point. I mean, I am what they call eristic. I love a fight like I had last night. I love a brawl like that. I don't want to get hit, so I do like it online or with people I know are not going to retaliate to that extent. I do worry about consequences. I don't face as many consequences as most people. I have to keep that in mind. My life is, I got to lean into honesty more than most people do because of the safe life I live. But anyway, to be able to look at things from different angles, from different perspectives, I want to just talk about that for a minute. So for every perspective you take, another perspective can be taken on the taking of that perspective. So at the most basic level, there's me being. I'm like a plant. I'm like an animal. That is, I'm just doing my stuff. I'm not actually seeing myself do it. Then there's seeing myself doing it. Then there's seeing myself doing it. So if I said, I'm a good person, that's me seeing myself doing stuff and making an observation about it, right or wrong. If I said, I like to say that I'm a good person, then I'm seeing myself seeing myself. And for every seeing of myself, I could go to another level of seeing myself. So for every story I tell about myself, another could be told of the storyteller. And that's infinite. So what we're talking about is an infinite recursion, infinite regress. And this is possible with language. Other animals don't get this. With language, we can mark things. So for example, I could have an argument with you. If you haven't seen The Argument Clinic by Monty Python, it's all about this. Um, I could have an argument with you, and then we can call it, we can give it a name, we can call it, we can distinguish it. It's actually a technical term in logic to call it. So I can say this argument, and I can say this argument is futile. And then you can say, no, it isn't. And then I can say, no, this is ridiculous. So we can keep on going up levels. And then you get into this question, what's the right level to get to land on? And so these are some of the challenges of recursive, of infinite recursion. Now, Noam Chomsky says that language it evolved to provide for this cluster flux of levels, what I call a loopy cluster flux. It's just you get into a loop at this level, and suddenly you got another level where you can talk about the loop at this level. I don't think that's true. I think it's a side effect of language, but one that you cannot escape. So this is why I love the double entendres, the contronyms, all this sort of stuff. It's all just delicious to me, but here's the perfect one for it. Where do you get off? If there's all these levels, what's the right level? And it's a double entendre, because where do you get off? When you're talking to a trumpist, this came up this week as well, they can be really subtle. They can get into the finest little detail, or they can go grand. It's cat and mouse. You're chasing them through levels, and whatever level you try to chase them to, they'll slip to another level that makes them smart. Yes. Because I work with this guy Terry Deacon, who's a linguist, um, uh, and a famous detractor of Chomsky's. That the Paraha have definitely come up, and so that's a further example of you could have a language without what Chomsky calls merge, which is this infinite levels, where I can nest statements within in statements, but it's not why it evolved or how it evolved, which are questions that Chomsky has glossed forever. He just says, yeah, I think he's not even wrong, and that he threw off the field for a long time over that stuff. Okay, so let's see. I want to go back to this thing about online speech is free from physical retaliation. Yes, it also, so we can see advantages of that. And it's also a great practice ground, because usually there's not going to be so much conflict. I mean, a lot of what I'm trying to do with my videos is provoke enough Trumpists that I get more practice at how to deal with it online. Let's see. How do we use that as an advantage? Comedy, or perhaps more specific, self-owning. Yes, I think that is it is. That's what I'm arguing for, is more self-owning and more poking fun at ourselves, and more conceding. I should probably, so before the meeting yesterday and the dinner last night, she had gone off on me, this person, saying that I was overgeneralizing the problem with language, the ways that language biases us. And she was speaking with great authority. She was going to teach me about how logic works and all of this. This is a former model who got into Ayn Rand and fancies herself a philosopher, and to some extent knows what she's talking about. But it is who knows? Anyway, no, it was a lot of self-owning to basically say, yeah. So she had said, you're engaged in what we call the lazy generalization fallacy. And I said, duly noted. X believes that I am engaged in overgeneralizing. I believe that she is undergeneralizing. Um, and we were talking about generalizations, which has to do with what I talked about last week, which is abduction. It's how do you categorize things? How do you decide that things are similar? How do you come to the iconicity? And so I said, obviously, if you're trying to cut the universe at its joints, there are two errors. There's the error of overgeneralizing, the error of undergeneralizing. So if you're trying to get cut at the realistic joints, you're going to think there's a joint where there isn't. That's undergeneralizing, or you're going to miss a joint that there is. So I said, I'm not pulling out some logical fallacy to say the universe of logic is on my side against you when I'm saying that I think you're undergeneralizing. That's the question: is how much, where do you draw the lines? Where do you get off on making a new distinction? Something like that. So that was but I came right back to it. I said, granted, you may know, it may be that despite my years working on this stuff, something about my temperament or my biases, I simply fed back to her what she said about me. And this was also interesting last night, because last night she went on this whole thing about what was wrong with me, speaking from authority. And what I did each time was I came back and said, I just want to make sure I get it. And I repeated what she said to her in my own words, what she said to me. And it had a effect of making her more and more confident. And that's another thing, Jeremy. And that's another thing. So, yes. So let's see. There is what I'm saying, Jeff, is that there is power in that. And it's also surprising. Remember, I think that when you're dealing with someone who has gotten addicted to absolution, that there's no consequences for them, addicted to that feeling of absolute authority, they're like exhibitionists. They want a chance to demonstrate their authority, and they can, because they can make an excuse for anything. They are people, in the case of the Trumpists, but across the board, these are people who turn terror, they found a way to ornament terror, scaredness, as bravery. Not hard to do. It's not hard to do. Try this out. We talk about understanding something, but there's also overstanding it. And I'm surprised this word doesn't have more traction. I coined it, someone else probably has too. But it's where to understand that would be to me. I wouldn't want to understand this. I do get a regular feed of that. The people say you're talking nonsense, or you're talking gibberish, or you're repeating yourself, which may be true, because I got to marinate people in an idea. It's not like I just say it and then it's suddenly gotten. But also, I could be too long-winded for my audience, or I may be beating a red horse, a dead horse, or a red dead horse. But it's that power of authority to say that. Where was I going with that? So, but what it mostly comes down to is an overstanding move, which is to say, this is beneath me. There's also a possibility, I played Indian music, classical Indian music, for a while, and noticed that most people think it all sounds the same. Well, not if you get into the deets. So there are lots of people who think that I'm just hammering away at the same stuff, and I might be, or they might be like the dog that just hears blah, 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 Jeremy, blah, 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 whatever. So whether they're catching the nuances or not. So he used to talk, eating a dead horse. That's right. And we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. I love those two, right? Eating a dead horse. Having a dead horse and eating it, too. I think I mentioned this last week. This has to do with metaphilia and metaphobia. I can't remember if I mentioned this. Stop me if you've heard it. My dad talked about Escherisms towards the end of his life. And I had a conversation with a brother who doesn't trust Escherisms. And let's see, that stands story about him being way too serious, and they're not really there to help him with the study. They just like that he made popcorn. Good, I like that. So So the example that I brought out was I haven't lived my life in vain for nothing, which was my dad's. My dad said that a few times, and you have a special brain Velcro to your parents, but also that's a great line. And my brother said, "Yeah, I don't see any meaning in it." So to me, this is a brother who is pretty confident that my dad was just a narcissist um, who was into wit for its own sake. He's saying that's a vacuous statement. I haven't lived my life in vain for nothing. Um, and there were other ones. He said, dying is a beautiful way to live. When he had cancer for 10, 13 years, he said, dying is a beautiful way to live as long as it doesn't kill you. That's another one of those kind of Escherisms. I love the Escherisms because why? They give you a loop that you can then look at. All my number one, this is just so important to my work. All moral principles I've ever heard are actually not principles, they're hypocritical. You shouldn't be judgmental is a judgment. Do not be negative is negative. Be intolerant of intolerance is intolerant. All of them. The golden rule is not a rule. It's not a moral principle. It's a paradox. They're all hypocritical. And so what do you do with that? Well, to me, that points out that it's not a principle, it's a dilemma. If you can make a moral principle self-negating, and it's easy to do with, I've never met one that you can't do this. Shame on you for shaming is a very popular one I get. And then you even get it in philosophy, choose determinism. You can try to think that trying is real, but trying isn't real. And I'm just tickled by this shit. And my brother is frustrated by this stuff. He doesn't like it. And so it happened to be a day before I put out this video about paradoxes and Escherisms and all of this that came out last week, I think. And I realized how profound. Yes, Yogi Berra is the master of the Escherism. I adore his work. No, really, great. Absurd. You have to go to people's funerals or else they won't go to yours. I mean, this stuff is great. There's another baseball player who tried it and came up with a format that I really like. Let's see if I can remember it. I can't. Maybe it'll come to me. I'm getting older. But anyway, I haven't lived my life in vain for nothing is profound. I had a friend asked me to look it up yesterday to see if my dad actually said it. I think my dad did say it. I couldn't find any reference to it. I haven't lived my life in vain in nothing. Think of how that fits in with how I think about my origins of life work. At one point, a philosopher introduced Terry to a group at the Institute for Religion in the Age of Science by saying, Terry is arguing that meaning is real but has no original or ultimate meaning. And I think that's exactly what we're dealing with. That nothing is trying, and then we're trying, and then in the heat death, nothing's trying again. It's not for anything, but it is for things locally. I am perfectly happy to live my life in vain, and it won't be for nothing. That is, I do recognize that I'm gone, everything's gone. Who knows what else is going on, but I don't assume that there's any ultimate purpose to it. Maybe we'll discover one. There's just no reason for me to assume it other than therapeutically. And I do think it's wonderful if you can admit it therapeutically. I did write this week something about that where I said a whole lot of conflict could be resolved if we could just say, I don't really care if it's true. It just feels healthy to say it about anything. But to admit that a lot of what we claim to believe isn't actually belief, it's relief. I think that it would be such a lubricant, and I don't expect we could do that. It's a little bit like the irony of that's my story and I'm sticking to it, which, by the way, is another Escherism. That's my story is standing outside of it. I'm sticking to it is plopping oneself back in it. It's all of this in and out stuff. I think that if you get to the point where you're enjoying irony, it's all about that. And where does it start? Fucking peekaboo. Peekaboo. Are you in or are you out? Are you here or are you not? It tickles us at first. And then it can lead to real major metaphobia, where people want a straight and narrow story and they don't want any of these trip ups along the way. They want logic to solve it all, and they want it all to solve it in their favor. So the metaphobic versus metaphilic competition, and the way in which that competition can bleed over into competition for confidence. So actually, I think I'm getting an idea. Remember, I said I want to shake their confidence. I do not want to steal their confidence. And I want to offer them something that's a better source of confidence. So what I'm suggesting here, what I'm going to have to play with more is, come on into confidence. The water is fine. But I have to be clear about that, because there is. So just as if you take any one of those paradoxical or hypocritical principles, like be intolerant of intolerance, I see three basic moves. One of them is towards fundamentalist hypocrisy, which is never mind that it's self-negating. You should be tolerant. You should always be tolerant. That would be an example of how you would resolve it one way, and claim your fundamentalism and simply ignore the fact that it's self-negating, that it's self-contradictory to say be intolerant of intolerance. The other, and that would be a way of landing comfortably in a sense of completeness, the confidence you would get from that, which is to say, nevertheless, always be tolerant. The other is cynical hypocrisy. So, for example, and I noticed this, I was actually dealing with the editor of of Psychology Today, and I'd been called out for being feisty with someone who had responded to one of my articles there. She said, "You're a name caller. You shouldn't name call." And I said, "You just called me a name caller." And I took it as relief. That's cynical hypocrisy. So I want to flag this because that's where most people would go if you say, "Hey, be ironic." Irony is next door neighbors to hypocrisy. They're ironically they're opposites. An ironist is admitting that they're of mixed feelings and dealing with all of these different levels. A hypocrite is denying it while exercising it. So anyway, the cynical one is to say, yeah, this just proves, be intolerant of intolerance. It just proves that morality is bullshit. I only use it weaponized. So I'll accuse someone of being a hypocrite or being a name caller or being intolerant, but it's not like I have to follow those laws. I don't want to land there. That is basically, I think of the Trumpists as doing those two moves. They are fundamentalist hypocrites and cynical hypocrites. This is why they will scold you for not caring about morality and then laugh at you about caring about morality in the same breath. So what I'm suggesting is an ironic confidence, and actually, I mean, dironic confidence. Dironic meaning dire irony. It's not just a laugh. And confidence is a calm confidence that is not the thirsty confidence that we have to watch out for, or else we end up in these competitions about who's going to get to steal whose confidence. So if I were to try and say, come on in, the water's fine, what I'm talking about is settling into your humanness and being calm enough about it that your confidence comes from your ability to deal with reality and try to be competent within it. Something like that. I'll think about it some more. Let's see what we've got here. I'm getting smarter at being dumb. Yeah, and there is something about the being dumb. Now, my method acting is largely, I love playing a goofball. First of all, I had the balls to do that. If I was thirstier, like I was for my first 50 years, that would have been harder. But it's definitely a demonstration of, in biology, we call it the handicap principle. So I'll give you an example of that. Let's see. And I just want to make sure it's the handicap principle I'm talking about here. Stotting. When a lion is chasing gazelles, some gazelles do this ridiculous jumping up into the air higher, which is basically like saying, "I have headroom." And it's like fighting with your sword fighting with your left hand, knowing that you're actually a right-hander and you could go there, but you're willing to do it that way because apparently you've got that much prowess as a sword fighter. There is so that's considered the handicap. No, it's related, but it's not exactly the handicap principle. Sorry about that. I get lost in trying to get the details right. But handicap principle is demonstrating non-fakeable capacity. Handicap principle, for example, it takes a whole lot of good genes in order to hold up a rack of horns like some animals do, or to have the plumage of a male peacock, or to be able to risk croaking a lot to get a mate. So handicap principle is demonstrating with poser-proof practices that you are capable of more. Another example of this would be the ponytail wearing top executive. You have to have some status in order to be able to afford to wear a ponytail so those are all handicap principle related things. A friend came up with the term that I was looking for this, and I haven't used it much. I was doing a leadership presentation for this guy who was a leadership management kind of guy. And I was talking about how, as a leader of an organization, if you can make mistakes, it will make people feel safer to make mistakes. So you make a mistake on purpose. This is a poser-proof practice. And he called it, leader slip. Leader slip. That's a good term for it. So I'm saying, in a way, if you want to lead people there, and this is just playing off of what Rob was saying there, to demonstrate that you can afford to be a goofball is actually, I think, a good way of dealing with it. Not if it's just snarky. I mean, it's a whole other strategy if you go, well, I'm going to be snarky and dada, meaning irrelevant. I'm just going to bring up non sequiturs and make fun of this conversation because the person's talking gibberish just to make themselves feel smart. That's a strategy too, but this one's different. It's where you deal directly with whatever they're talking about, but you actually play into it kind of goofball. I think it's worth pursuing. And remember, I think this is all wood chopping and wood shedding. We're trying to find new approaches that will do better than what we've got because what we're doing is not working so well. All right. So I'm happy to take on, let's see. Hello. Let's see. They are serendipitous. I'm not sure what that's a reference to. I had a boss who used them. Let's see. All right. More fodder. What do you want to talk about? And I'm going to just check to see what else I've been up to this week. Again, just to see if there's anything to harvest. So remember, in general, what I'm proposing for this meta stuff, for this whole alternative way of being, which I'd call dironic confidence today. It's too mouthy, but it packs a lot in there. Dire, ironic, calm confidence is that you collect your ideas. That's the fun of it, is you get to keep on harvesting. The comedian who does that in his joke routine playing into MAGA crazy, Cliff Cash. That's right. So he's very popular these days, and rightly so, because he's got that approach. And that's also playing the dumb. It's Columbo without the gotcha at the end. And I don't want to assume I've got a gotcha at the end. I don't want to. The more I'm trying to get out of the conversation, the more stakes I've got at it, the more vulnerable I am, the more performance anxiety I'll have. So, yeah, I actually like it. without a goal like I'm going to finally grab them at the end. I did write this week. FDR was right. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. But fear of fear, metafear or metaphobia, is no trivial matter. It yanks us all around. FDR, and by the way, I was fiancé to his great granddaughter for a while. Boy, that was fun. We had a good time. She was wonderful people. But FDR, we have nothing to fear but fear itself, makes it sound trivial. I think fear of fear is huge in us. You say this is the compounding influence of self-confidence. If you think about self-confidence as a commodity, a necessity, an essential for the human diet, because we have language, okay? If you think of it, and that's where I work more and more, Mojonomics, which is trying to understand the supply of, demand for, and competition over self-confidence. Notice how it works. The self-confident get more self-confident, and the unself-confident get less confident. The unconfident get less confident. So imagine you go out in the world and you're not confident. That's going to show on you. There's going to be blood on you, and someone's going to pick you off for it, or they're going to look at you weird, or they're going to want to stay away from you because it's also contagious. If you lack confidence, then this is the downside of a mutual admiration society. No, it's really tense. Have you ever been in a relationship with someone who fed your confidence and then they decided that you were bad? It's a major plummet. I've been in partnerships where I could say no wrong, and then suddenly, for whatever reason, and I mean that, whatever reason, it could be that I did something wrong, could be that they got interested elsewhere, whatever, or that we just escalated into a problem. Suddenly I could say no right. And I'd look around and I couldn't figure out anything. So as my confidence bleeding out, the other person, whether they meant to or not, has walked off with my confidence. That is, I don't have it anymore, and I had it before, but because I depended on them for confidence, and now they've walked away and taken my confidence with me, and taken my confidence from me, and shifted their appreciation or admiration to some other guy. Because my girlfriends always ended up with other successful relationships shortly after me. I was definitely a good luck Chuck, and they would even thank me sometimes. But no, it was hard going because the plummet in self-confidence was a big thing. On the other hand, if you've got confidence or the MAGA people, that stuff breeds on itself. The more confident you are, the more confident you get. Confidence builds confidence, regardless of whether you're competent. So I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, I think it's worth paying attention to those things and why I know why. Fear of fear itself. So there's a meta quality to all of these disturbing feelings. If I feel angst, then I can feel angst about having angst. If I feel depressed, I can get depressed about being depressed. You know this one from any night you've had without sufficient sleep. You know what it's like to be up for whatever reason, too much coffee too late in the day, or something that's bugging you, whatever. You get in a loop where your feelings, your body and mind are amping each other up, and then you get the compounding effect of, I gotta be sleeping right now, I can't afford this, which keeps you further up. So all of those ironic compoundings are part of the problem here. So yeah, fear of fear is a big problem. And notice I said it yanks us all around. So come back to the rung running dance we're doing with someone, this meta thing. There are people who are yanked around by their need to avoid fear. This would be the metaphobic move, where if you say, well, you want to talk about this, let's talk about this. But when they feel cornered and like the fear could come back, and they say, actually, no, let's talk about this other thing. So all of that whataboutism or gish-gobbing would be an effect of they're running to avoid any kind of confrontation, and they'll go high, they'll go low. None of that matters. I remember a conversation with a different girlfriend that she didn't like her work, and And I picked up on that, and she didn't like her job, and I suggested something about it, and she didn't want to look at the possibility of actually changing jobs. So she said, actually, it was actually this trivial matter today. It didn't matter. It was about them not having ordered something I needed. And then I said, well, you were talking about whether the work in general. And she said, and then she zoomed all the way up to the level of, well, life is what you make it, or something broad. So there's a kind of cat and mouse. It's not necessarily moving up a level. Though I will say this about the moving up a level. Uh, Many people are afraid of going meta, of rung running, for a reasonable reason. I write about the promise and peril of going meta. So imagine that you and I are in a fight, and I decide to say, no, actually, I don't want to talk about this fight right now. I want to step back from it and just to a position of neutrality. I'm no longer an advocate in this fight, and I just want to just get the overview and zoom out and look at what's going on between us. And when I do, I realize that the problem is all you. That's a meta move. It's the one that, you can see how that would work. And then I can say, well, actually, observing you doing that, I can say that actually you're the problem. And we could do that thing up and up levels. Or we could do it up and then down, because at that point, it's just cat and mouse over levels. Okay, so I am suggesting something different from that. And I have to be clear on what that is, or else it just becomes another way. Meta becomes a way to be slippery. And I say, well, you're not. One of my favorite moves ever along these lines is, oh, you're not seeing the whole picture. That's a wild move, because that's basically saying I see the whole picture. Whereas with meta, you never get the whole picture. It's incompleteness all the way up. Okay. All right. Loved analysis of irony versus hypocrisy alongside cynicism. Good. Thank you, Seth. Yeah, and yeah, so let me just come back to that for a second. Ironically, irony is often confused with hypocrisy. The difference is, and this gets to my point is, that irony admits to ambivalence and hypocrisy denies it. Irony is me naming it as me seeing it in me and putting it on the table where you can watch it, which I would not want to do if I'm metaphobic, if I'm afraid that you knowing that I actually see this potential that I am double dealing, for example, that would be a vulnerability. But if I can actually say, yeah, I already got a handle on it. And for this, I think pre-grieving is essential. You have to be able to look at yourself and say, you have to inoculate yourself against a temptation to say, what? How dare you accuse me of something humans do? You really have to get over that in your bones. This has got to be non-fakeable. It's non-fakeable. You have to give an authentic sign that you're okay with it. You can't just say, well, sticks and stones don't break my bones, but names will never hurt me. You have to feel it in your bones. And it's real. I'm assuming it takes a long time to get comfortable with it. And I have to say that because I wish it didn't take a long time. It took me a long time, and I'm a special case because I had this incredibly lucky life that, for whatever reason, fed me into looking at my shadow at an early age. And some of that was me having an appetite to look at that stuff, partly for melodrama, partly for sex. The first girlfriends I got were from my brazen self-honesty. In general, I think that was it got me girlfriends outside my league. So there was payoff for me. This kind of ironic approach has served me well. But on top of that, I had 10 years of psychoanalysis 4 days a week, starting at age 8, which is there's nothing psychoanalytic about it, but it was an hour a day of me talking about what was going on inside me. And it still took me ages to get to where I was comfortable seeing and admitting to the buffoon human I am. And that's, I think the metaphobia is really a big deal for us humans. So, and I got to work it out, because metaphobia could also mean whatever level I'm talking at is the right level because it's a safe level. This just came to me in the last little while. And by the way, I'm talking long. I always feel, you remember, I'm a hyper conscientious brute, so I can talk for hours, but I also worry about wearing out. You're welcome. But then you're free to leave anytime. Anyway, so let's see what I was going to say. Shoot. Let's see. Do you feel your psychotherapy was helpful to you overall? Yes, I do, but not because it was psychotherapy. This is the interesting thing. I don't feel like I got anything Freudian out of the Freudian, because he was so Freudian that, I mean, he hardly ever talked. I'm lying on a couch at age 8. I'm lying on a couch and expressing myself to someone who is a cipher behind me. And we had very little interaction. I did that for 5 years, and I went back to it at 35. I would say the main thing it did for, and I wish we could do this more effectively and more efficiently, more cheaply. I don't know how it works. I don't want to grandstand like I've landed someplace. What I'm saying is, that's a whole lot of listening to your own shit. That's a whole lot of seeing yourself being. And I wish it didn't take so long to do that. And I wrote an article for Psychology Today a couple of years ago about basically assaying psychotherapy versus meditation as ways to get to this place where you can look at your shit, you're okay with your shit, you're over the question, what's wrong with me, and you're into the question, what's up with us. That was a pivot for me at the end of it. That's how I left psychotherapy, is that this is something, what I'm dealing with, nothing, it's the compassion, it's a self-compassionate side of nothing human is foreign to me. I mean, this is, and it's where I get my freedom from fear that they're going to accuse me of something, because I'm assuming, first of all, that they're paying no attention to degrees, questions of degrees. So if someone says you're hateful, that's a binary, and that means that I'm hateful and they're not. They're not talking about whether they're more hateful or what they're hateful of. They're not paying attention to where you're pointing that loaded thing. But in the meantime, I'm thinking, yeah, well, I've already pre-grieved I know I'm hateful. I actually wrote to someone yesterday that I despise a certain person, a different person. People mostly stay away from saying that word unless they're saying. I said I despise people like that, but I find them fascinating from a safe distance. Anyway, yes, I found it useful, but it's really expensive. And think about meditation as an alternative to way to get to see your shit. Depending on how it's framed for you, it's complicated around meditation. So meditation is, in one sense, it's an attempt to drown out all those thoughts, or at least dissipate them, so you're no longer thinking, you're just being. Okay? But on the other hand, we know it also, and another possibility is that you're transcending, you're going to leave your ego by becoming mindful. Neither of those will bring you to Dyronic confidence, I don't think. If that's the goal, we're not talking about mindful, we're talking about mindful of levels, we're talking about mindless. That is, you become more like an animal, more like, get away from your thoughts, your hungry ghost, something like that. You're trying to transcend your hungry ghost. Whereas what I'm talking about is I want to admit to my hungry ghosts and manage them. Okay. But there is a way in which meditation could be an effective way to get to this, is if you are spending that time seeing yourself and seeing yourself being and all of that. Learning is a game changer combined with breathing technique. Yes, learning to meditate is a game changer, maybe. And it sounds like it really is for you, and bless that. It isn't for me, but I can see the breathing technique certainly has its place. There's techniques to slow my breath when I'm getting a little agitated. That's a good technique. It's not immediate, because the biochemistry, this is the thing about emotions, is that whatever sparks them can last shorter than the digestion of those biochemical secretions. It takes a while to calm down, but breathing would certainly be important to that. Belmundo G, if let's see, meditation is taking a step back and observing your own brain, trying to get your attention. Good. So this one's right on the edge here. Okay. So you're observing your own brain trying to get your attention. So I'd be interested in, so that one could cut a couple of different ways. So it's taking a step back. So a step back is actually a step out, I'm suggesting. It's using your mental capacity to observe yourself from an outside place. So there's all of these interesting subjective, what's the subject there? Okay, your own brain trying to get your attention. So you're talking about your attention. What is your attention? And the question to me is, I want to look at where it's loaded. What's the goal? The idea people feel safe in their own unacknowledged metaphobia feels central to these ideas. When you stop being scared of self-awareness is when you realize self-change is possible. Good. I want to watch out with both of these statements because they seem to prescribe an endpoint, and I'm not, and I want to hear what those endpoints are. So what do you get for stepping back and observing your own brain trying to get your attention? One way to think about that, one thing that might imply, I'm just reading to try to understand, but I'm going to simply lay out one of them, is your brain is a pesky, annoying, neurotic person trying to get your calm attention. If that's the way we're going, then we're actually talking about what I was talking about earlier, which is that you're trying to transcend that stuff. Okay, good. For me, meditation is remaining in the present moment, dwelling on the past, not to worry about the future. Got it. Now watch this. Okay, so I hear this lots. I get this one lots. I dated a partner for years who was a mindfulness meditation psychotherapist. Not years, months. It didn't last. One question is that how you're supposed to live your life, or is it something you do therapeutically for a minute? Like brushing your teeth or something like that. It's something good for you. Like I play music. I'm going to a jam session in Muir Beach this afternoon. Okay, that's a kind of entering the present moment, not dwelling in the past. So is it good to do that every once in a while, or are you saying that's how we should live our lives? Then beyond that, I want to say a couple things about it. And this may not satisfy you, might actually frustrate you or distance you from me. Trump is the most be here now person I know. He's not dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. He'll dwell on the past when it serves him in the present. He'll do that. But and I was friends with Ram Dass. He's the guy who coined "Be Here Now." Okay, and still, I don't buy that that's the way I want to live my life. And not only that, I would ask people, can you be present thinking about the past? Or, and you use the loaded word dwelling. Okay, so I also know what it's like to want to be in that place. And to me, it's when I don't want to think about my past or future because they scare me. And that would be a metaphobia. I don't want to zoom out to see my overall life because I'm terrified of who I've been and who I'll be. That was when I felt like joining a Zen monastery. So I am familiar with the case you're making. I'm not sure if it's clear. I would love to hear some more from you about how you're thinking about that. So the two questions I've suggested to you are, let's see, for me, mindfulness is therapeutic, self-healing, calming the echo chamber. It's an ongoing practice. Okay, so this is you've just clarified for me. It's a practice. It's a place you go for self-healing, and it's a place you go to calm the echo chamber where the reverberations, which by the way, are another effect of this going meta. Meta is about reverberations, that you can see yourself, seeing yourself, seeing yourself. It's an echo effect kind of thing. So yes, to calm all of that down. Now, the conversation I had with this PhD mindfulness professor was, she was saying it's a way to be in all of your life all the time. I said, and then I kept on asking her about it. She said, well, no, I mean, you do have to think about your future and you do have to do that. And yeah, so So it's something, she agreed it was something you do like brushing your teeth. It's good. It's a good self-healing preventative medicine sort of thing. And then she went right back to saying it's a state of mind you should be in all the time, mindfulness. And I said, but you shouldn't brush your teeth 24 hours a day. And she said, you don't know that for sure. And that was the end, not just of that conversation, but of our relationship. I realized that we weren't compatible in that way, that she was willing to extol it vaguely. So I actually think mindfulness itself is a loaded, load-bearing, loosely defined last word. And that's why I want to poke at it and find out what you really mean by it. Okay? Sorry. And I have personal direct experience of it. Around the time I dated this woman, mindfulness was the term. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we may be different on this, and it's totally fine. So you have this idea of the great yogis breathing and living mindfully after years of habit. So if I were to connect up all the ideas you've got here, I'm hearing this, that it's a practice, but if you practice long enough, you get into the habit. You get into breathing and having the habit be your life to where you are always in the present moment, never dwelling on the past, and never worrying about the future. Is that where you would suggest this goes? That's what the practice is about for you? Present is the only way. Yeah, no, that's where we disagree. By the way, just to point out, present is the only way. Let's take a look at this for a second because of what I said earlier. And by the way, I am so glad that you're sticking around for this conversation and that we can have this conversation. And I'm also so glad that you found something that is serving you. This business about uh, 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 therapeutic self-healing, calming the echo chamber. Amen. That's what we're talking about. How do we do this? But present is the only way is another principle. And I want to point this out. For all of eternity, into the future, stay present. Do you see the problem there? Now, I understand. Let me just tie this all up with one last point. You know who's present all the time? Present in the present all the time is animals and plants and bacteria. The vast majority of life is present and is not dealing with the echo chamber that humans are. We're back to what Chomsky was talking about. We're back to this thing about when you've got words, you've got an echo chamber that no other creature has to deal with. They have what's called episodic memory, and it's a funny name for it. Their bodies certainly accumulate memories. So if you're kicked by someone, you're going to be wary of being kicked by that person again. But they don't have the kind of reverberation echo chambers that we have to deal with. So I understand this appetite. You know who else is always in the present? Computers, but they're not actually experiencing anything. But AI is always in the present, sort of. It's got no cognitive dissonance. There's no echo chambers in there. So, not settled with world. We're living in sensation, present by definition. I don't think. Well, yes, we are on the same page about that. They might be traumatized by their past. If an animal, you know about these, the rescue dogs and all of those sorts of things. I understand. I'll call it slightly disparagingly bovine envy. I wish I were a cow. And no, I disdain it. Yes, maybe I'll be a cow in another lifetime, but if I am, I'll never know it. I am really glad to have been born into this loopy cluster flux that is being human. I also consider us the bravest animals on earth by far because of the anxieties and doubts and echo chamber we have to deal with. Um, they learn from their past in a Pavlovian sense. They learn indexically. They don't learn conceptually. I will argue. Ignorance is bovine. It's divine. It's divine. It's also where you get absolution. Mindfulness meditation, they all have been trying to transcend the human condition. And I would think the underlying question behind that is this big burden that we humans deal with that no other organisms do. We have to throw all into life knowing we're going to be thrown out. We have to live our lives in vain, but not for nothing. It's really hard for us. I have to invest in life knowing that I'll have to divest from it all. We have that encounter. It makes us incredibly anxious. I was talking the other day to a professor, an anthropology professor from India, whose focuses on animal-human communication, a colleague of Terry's at Berkeley. And we were talking about this, and I pointed out to her that in Gregor Samsa, who gets turned into a beetle in Kafka's story Metamorphosis, he had it easy. And once you're a beetle, you don't remember being human. The beetle, if a beetle got turned into Gregor Samsa, it would take him decades to recover because, it's just so hard being human. But I think the one where you want to go bovine is not that far from where the Trumpists have gone. And so the question I pose, and I do hope, Del Mondo G, that you come back next week and play with this question with me. What then makes the difference between someone who is present like him and is whatever level he's on is the right level because he's not thinking about other levels. He's just wherever gives him the most peace of mind. What distinguishes that from the mindfulness that you pursue? And it can't just be because mine is a good one and his is a bad one. I actually want to understand because he would say, no, mine is a good one, yours is a bad one. So I'm actually asking a question. That's a voluntary elective potential homework project for if you want. Think about the versions of bovinity that I imagine other vehicles. Good, and I'm going to actually bring up one last thing about this. Your subject is all over the place. Who is the subject? So you're talking about your brain. I think you mean your mind because I don't. But your brain nagging at you. So are you your brain or are you you? And then there's this interesting line from Suzuki Roshi. He says, life is like getting on a boat that's about to sink. So I imagine every vehicle as souls carrying cargo. Some vehicles have small burdens, some have double trailer truckloads. Good point. And compassion for them all, but I do not think that I cannot have compassion for them all and be accommodating of them all. There are people with very big burdens who are going to get us all killed. So I can't just be sympathetic with them. That's where I go here. Remember, I'm a guy who doesn't land. I'm watching out for opposite perils all the time. And the equanimity I'm seeking is to be equally wary of opposite perils. So I just want to come back to this thing. So you're suggesting that I am the vehicle carrying a small burden or a big burden, double trailer truckload. Great image. Roshi is saying that we get on a boat that's about to sink. Now, I don't buy that. I am the boat. I'm sinking. With a boat that's about to sink, maybe I can get rescued or transcend. Maybe I can get myself off the boat and the boat will sink and I'm not sinking. So we're ending in just 1 minute. I want to say I am not going to be doing the live thing tomorrow where Rob, you're just bringing this up right now. Let's see if I can squeeze it in. Yeah, I think I'm going to miss it tomorrow. I have Terry's one of his last days here and other things going on. So not tomorrow, but I hope you come back, Del Mondo G. Oh, no problem. No problem. It's impossible except getting on a sinking boat. Yeah, so I'm going to miss tomorrow. But I want to remind you, the psychoproctology meeting has been going great. We've got new blood. They're bringing new insights. This is every other Sunday, so it's not this Sunday, but the 29th, 9 o'clock in the morning. And we don't record it. And it's at this usual place. Let's see, Google Meet. So even these days, I've been putting out the word. You don't have to email me except if you want to get on the email list. But for example, Del Mondo G, great to meet you. I'd love to have more of this conversation to the extent you like it. And there's no pushback on the value of meditation. We're just trying to figure out how it plays out and how to avoid the slippery slopes on all sides of everything we do. That was my point about overgeneralizing, undergeneralizing. My equanimity comes from being equally wary of risks on opposite sides of me. I think of life as driving down a dark, winding, crowded road with two backseat drivers, only warning about the perils on their side. And I have to keep on changing my direction, sometimes being more present, sometimes being less present. This is why I object to presence as the only way. Sometimes I got to zoom out and think about the bigger picture. Sometimes I got to zoom in. I know my temptation to just be in the moment. There are times when I enjoy that as peace of mind and all of that. But in general, my equanimity is not, this is the true way. It's equally wary of both sides. And if you've been wary about both sides, if you've been dealing with these dilemmas all life long, as you have, and you don't deny that they're dilemmas by pretending that they're principles, then you get calm about the fact that you're watching out on both sides. We call it a balancing act. You call it all sorts of things. But it's the tension between them that I love. All right. I hope to see you guys again next week. Hey, I bought a new audio system to make sure I don't have that problem again. Thank you for being here. Balance. What I want to suggest about that is balance ain't a notch in the middle. It's a tension. We're dealing with tensions. We can fall in opposite directions. So while balance, equanimity sounds good, I'll just flag this before we leave. Hard left, hard right, hard center, hard choices. Hard left, love is the answer, or being present is the answer, or something is the answer. Hard right, oh, it turned out that I got burnt by that, so I'm going to go the other direction. Toughness. Hard center, tough love is the answer. Tough love is the answer. Hard choices. No, tough love is the question. When to be tough, when to be loving. My equanimity comes from worrying equally about whether I'm too assertive or not assertive enough for the same situation, the situation I'm in. All right. See you guys next time. Thanks for being here. Really like it.